Hello, welcome back to the Health Everyday channel. Today we're going to talk about a topic that is, to say the least, curious and essential for those who are concerned about their health, but not crazy about it, okay? I know everyone has that shopping list, right? But have you ever stopped to think that some of those foods that seem harmless could actually be sabotaging your health? Well, sometimes we get fooled by pretty packaging and promises of a healthy life, but the hole is deeper. In this video, I'm going to show you 7 foods you should avoid at all costs. And when I say avoid, I'm not talking about being paranoid, but about making more conscious choices. Because at the end of the day, what we put on our plates has an impact on our well-being, our mood, and even our mood. But let's find out a bit more about these foods, which, despite being popular, may be harming you in ways you can't even imagine. If you're a regular shopper, you've probably noticed how the shelves are full of products that promise miracle. But do they all really deliver what they promise? Let's find out together and maybe even rethink some of our choices. After all, eating well doesn't have to be complicated, but it does have to be conscious. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's go? So, let's start with the first villain on the list: liquid sugar. And look, it's not an exaggeration to call it a villain, is it? What many people don't realize is that this type of sugar is one of the big villains behind problems such as obesity, diabetes, and even heart disease. When we talk about sugar, most people immediately think of desserts, sweets, right? But the real danger lies in the drinks we consume, thinking they're super harmless. You know that fruit juice you have for breakfast, or that can of soda at lunch? These drinks are full of sugar. And the problem isn't just the amount, but the fact that in liquid form, sugar is absorbed by the body very quickly. The result? Blood glucose spikes, which, over time, undermine your health. Now you might be thinking, oh, but fruit juice is healthy, right? Well, that's where we're wrong. When you squeeze an orange, for example, you end up removing the fibers that help process sugar more slowly. What's left? Pure fructose, which goes straight to your liver and can cause a host of problems if consumed in excess. It's practically like drinking a soft drink, only in a healthy guise. And speaking of soft drinks, this is undoubtedly one of the biggest villains. Full of sugar, colorings, preservatives, it's practically a cocktail of things your body doesn't need. And you know what's worse? You get used to that sweet taste, and before you know it, you're reaching for more and more. It's a vicious cycle that's not good for anyone. Now, I'm not here to demonize fruit juice, okay? But the point is that we need to be aware of what we're consuming. And there's more. That mayonnaise we love, as well as being loaded with seed oil, also comes with additives, preservatives, and often hidden sugars. All this to ensure that it has a creamy texture and a pleasant taste. But at what cost? Now, before you despair and vow never to touch a spoonful of mayonnaise again, calm down. There are alternatives. You can opt for mayonnaise made with olive oil, which is much less inflammatory and brings the benefits of omega-3. Or better still, how about making your own mayonnaise at home? With a few basic ingredients, such as egg, mustard, and olive oil, you can create a much healthier and tastier version. Got it? It's all about making more conscious choices. And speaking of conscious choices, let's move on to the next item on our list: sweetened and flavored yogurt. This one seems harmless, but it can be full of health traps. Let's take a closer look. Now we're going to talk about one of those foods that, for a long time, was the darling of diets, but which in reality can be a real trap. Sweetened and flavored yogurt. You know that strawberry, red fruit, or vanilla yogurt you pick up at the supermarket, thinking you're making the right choice? Well, you think you're being healthy, but you're actually bringing home a sweet treat in disguise. What should be something simple and nutritious, like natural yogurt, ends up becoming a cocktail of sugar and artificial additives that you definitely don't need. And the worst thing is that, because it's sold as healthy, we eat it without even thinking twice, without any guilt. But the reality is that a jar of these often has as much sugar as a dessert. And seriously, that's a big problem. Let's start with the basics. All that sugar isn't just empty calories. It goes straight into your bloodstream, causing glucose spikes. And these spikes, folks, are a direct passport to things like insulin resistance and, over time, type 2 diabetes. In other words, it's not just about gaining a few pounds, it's about really messing with your health. Got it? So keep an eye on what you're putting in your cart. And it doesn't stop there. These yogurts also often contain artificial flavorings, which are substances created in a laboratory to imitate the taste of fruit. Instead of consuming something natural, you're ingesting chemical compounds that your body can simply reject. These products only serve to mask the absence of the real fruit, which is actually present in minimal quantities and often in the form of pulp, where it already loses much of its nutrients. So what should we do? The answer is simple. Go back to basic. Opt for natural yogurt, without sugar or flavoring. You can add fresh fruit, honey, even a little granola on top for flavor and texture. But then you already have the security of knowing exactly what you're eating. That way, you control the amount of sugar and avoid artificial additives. It's a healthier, more conscious choice. And since we're talking about choices that affect our health in ways we can't even imagine, the next topic will surprise you. Ultra-processed foods. Let's understand how these products are gradually undermining our health and what we can do to avoid them. So guys, we've already talked about the dangers of ultra-processed foods, but now we're going to go straight to a specific ingredient that is hidden in many of these products. Modified starches. These starches come from things like corn, wheat, rice, potatoes. So far, so good, right? But then they go through a lot of industrial processes that chemically alter everything. So the starch you find in a cookie, in a ready-made sauce, no longer has anything to do with what you'd find in a potato or a kernel of corn, the way nature made it. You know, it's as if they've taken something that was supposed to be simple and natural and turned it into an ingredient that, in the end, your body doesn't even recognize properly. And what's wrong with that, you might be wondering? These starches are modified to improve texture, extend shelf life, or withstand heat in processed products. In general, these starches behave very similarly to sugar in the body. They are quickly digested and absorbed, generating spikes in blood glucose, which can lead to a series of metabolic problems such as weight gain, insulin resistance, and aggravating diabetes. And it doesn't stop there. Prolonged consumption of modified starches can contribute to chronic inflammation in the body, giving rise to a number of diseases. What's worse, these ingredients are hidden in most foods, and without even realizing it, you could be consuming large quantities of them every day. Now, one important thing to remember is that modified starches are far from necessary in your diet. In fact, the more you stay away from products containing these ingredients, the better for your health. The tip: read labels carefully. Avoid foods that list modified starches among the ingredients, and always prefer those that are minimally processed, made from ingredients you recognize and trust. So folks, we've come to the end of this conversation, but we can't finish without leaving you with a question. How about rethinking your food choices and starting to adopt a more conscious and natural attitude? Taking care of your health is not a sprint, it's a marathon, and every choice, however small it may seem, makes a huge difference in the long run. After everything we've discussed, the question is, what does all this mean for us, for our health, for the decisions we make every day? The conclusion here is simple, but no less impactful. Modern eating, with all these shortcuts and promises of practicality, takes its toll. You like juice, how about diluting it with a little water? Or better still, choose to eat the whole fruit with all its fiber and nutrients. Water, unsweetened teas, and even good old sparkling water can be great alternatives. Anyway, my point is that liquid sugar is one of the main saboteurs of our health. And what's worse, it's everywhere, disguised as healthy or, at the very least, harmless. So keep an eye out, because next on the list is another that we love to consume without thinking too much: pasteurized cheese products. Let's talk about them now. And while we're on the subject of villains in disguise, let's move on to the next one on our list: pasteurized cheese product. Here, we need to be extra careful because these products often present themselves as cheese, but they have very little cheese in them. You know, that cheese that melts beautifully on top of nachos, or that slice that you put on your sandwich without thinking twice. Well, these delicacies can be a real trap. What happens is that these products are highly processed. Truth is that to be considered cheese, product needs to be at least 51% real cheese. And what makes up the rest? An unhealthy mixture of vegetable oils, modified starches, and a list of ingredients you can't even pronounce. And look, people, this isn't cheese. This is a cheap imitation, a highly industrialized product that is far from offering the same benefits as real cheese. Now, think about it. Do you think that a food that needs so many additives to look like cheese can be good for your health? These products often contain ingredients such as canola oil, which is highly inflammatory, and modified starches, which, as we've already mentioned, are basically sugars in disguise. And the worst thing is that these processed cheeses end up sneaking into our diet in a variety of ways, whether it's a quick snack, a ready-made lasagna, or even the sauce for that pasta we love. So what should you do? The tip is simple. Always go for natural cheese. Kind made from milk, yeast, and a little salt. Real cheese has flavor, texture, and, most importantly, nutrients. Of course, I'm not saying that you need to cut processed cheeses out of your life completely, but how about making more conscious choices? Opt for cheeses that have a short and clear list of ingredients. After all, we deserve to know what we're eating, don't we? And speaking of choices that seem healthy but aren't, let's move on to the next topic. Protein bars. Let's talk about how these supposed diet allies can actually be a shot in the foot. Now, let me tell you something that might surprise you, but you should keep an eye out for. Much-loved protein bars. Yes, the ones we find in every supplement store, in the diet aisle, and which promise to be a practical and healthy option for those on the go. However, the reality can be quite different. Many people consume these bars thinking they are doing their health a big favor, cutting calories, gaining quality protein. But is that really the case? In practice, many of these bars are practically chocolate bars in disguise. Only, instead of being full of cocoa, they are full of processed ingredients, hidden sugars, and low-quality protein. And that's not to mention the preservatives, artificial sweeteners, and those endless ingredient lists that read more like a chemistry experiment. Let's be honest. If a protein bar tastes like dessert, it's because it was designed to addict you, not nourish you. And even those that sell themselves as low-carb or sugar-free don't escape. Often, what replaces traditional sugar are sweeteners that can have negative effects on your metabolism, not to mention the bloating and intestinal discomfort that some of these bars can cause. What about the protein? Well, most of the time, the protein in these bars comes from cheap, overprocessed sources, such as soy protein isolate. Now tell me, do you really want to replace a healthy meal or snack with something that is basically ultra-processed? Look, what we should do is go back to basics. If you need a dose of protein, why not opt for real food? Hard-boiled egg, a handful of nuts, a piece of natural cheese. All this will provide you not only with quality protein, but also with vitamins, minerals, and, of course, real flavor. Got it? Now that we've demystified these bars, let's move on to another item that may be sabotaging your diet without you realizing it. Mayonnaise with seed oil. Let's understand why this ingredient is so problematic. Now let's talk about something that is probably in everyone's fridge, but which can be a real villain in disguise. Mayonnaise with seed oil. Guys, this is one of those ingredients that we use on a daily basis, thinking it's just adding a little extra flavor to our dishes, but the reality is quite different. Come on, have you ever looked at the list of ingredients in the mayonnaise you have at home? I bet the first item on there is soybean oil, or some other refined vegetable oil. And you know what the problem with that is? These seed oils, such as soybean, canola, and corn, go through quite a process and end up full of omega-6, which in excess can cause inflammation. And guess what? They're everywhere in our modern diet. If your body is constantly receiving these inflammatory fatty acids, what do you think will happen in the long term? Chronic inflammation, heart problems, increased risk of autoimmune diseases. And that's just the beginning. These oils go through intense industrial processes involving high temperatures, chemical solvents, and even deodorants to mask the bad smell they naturally have. In other words, we're not talking about something that nature offers us simply and purely, but an ultra-processed product that has already lost its natural property. And sooner or later, that price shows up in our health. Now, if there's one thing you can take away from all this, it's that the power is in our hands. It always has been. Every time you choose ultra-processed food, full of sugar, additives, and ingredients you can't even pronounce, you're unwittingly making a deal with the food industry. But on the other hand, when you choose fresh, natural, minimally processed food, you're opting for health, vitality, and most importantly, long-term well-being. And look, I'm not saying it's easy, because it's not. We live in a world where practicality often trumps nutrition, where marketing is more seductive than the list of ingredients. But here's the good news. You don't have to change everything at once. Small steps, small changes can make a huge difference. Replace that protein bar with fresh fruit, swap industrialized mayonnaise for homemade, choose natural yogurt instead of one full of sugar. These are simple choices, but when added together, they can transform your health. And at the end of the day, it's about reconnecting with real food. Food that comes from the earth, that really tastes good, that nourishes the body and soul. It's not just about what we eat, but about how we eat. Pleasure of preparing a meal, of sharing it with those we love, of feeling good, knowing that you're taking care of yourself. So how about starting now? Look at your next meal as a chance to make a conscious choice that will take you closer to the health and well-being you deserve. After all, as Hippocrates said, let your food be your medicine. Got it? Now it's up to you. Wait a minute. You're not leaving yet. If this content has boosted your knowledge, just imagine what else we have in store. There's no end to quality content. If you enjoyed this video, it doesn't hurt to leave a like, subscribe, activate the little bell, and comment. Tell us what you thought, which part surprised you the most, or even your questions. It's quick and really helps the channel grow. We love chatting with you. Oh, and don't forget to check out the other videos on the channel. There's content on healthy eating, exercise, mental health. It's a complete package to keep you up to date. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for sticking around. See you next time.